The man in the navy cap stood quiet. Faded jeans, rain dripping onto the marble floor. Guests in tailored suits brushed past him without a glance. "Sir, the lounge is for guests only," said the hostess, her smile polished but sharp. "You'll have to wait outside." He nodded once, calm, stepped back toward the revolving door. To them, he was just another wanderer who'd wandered too far into luxury. No one knew he was Ethan Cole, the CEO of Redline Holdings, a billion-dollar group that quietly owned the very building they were standing in. He hadn't come to be served. He'd come to see what respect looked like when money wasn't in sight. And by noon, everything would change. The Regal Meridian Hotel shimmered under the morning rain. Crystal glass, polished brass, the kind of place where silence was part of the price. Inside, the air smelled of espresso and roses. A pianist played softly in the corner, each note echoing across marble floors that gleamed like still water. Staff glided through the lobby with professional smiles, the kind that ended before reaching their eyes. Ethan stepped inside again, quiet, unnoticed. His cap dripped a single line of water onto the pristine floor. The concierge glanced at him once, then looked away. He took a seat near the window, watching rain roll down the glass like melted silver. No one offered him a towel. No one asked his name. Behind the counter stood Richard Hale, the front manager, tall, polished, self-assured. His suit was sharp, his smirk sharper. He noticed Ethan and immediately frowned. "Excuse me, sir," Richard said, approaching with the authority of someone who'd mistaken arrogance for class. "This area is reserved for guests." Ethan looked up, voice calm. "I was hoping to order coffee." Richard's tone turned clipped. "The cafe is for registered patrons. We don't, accommodate loiterers." Ethan nodded lightly. "I'll wait." Richard blinked, unsure how to read the man's stillness. Then he chuckled, under his breath. "Suit yourself." A few nearby guests glanced over their newspapers, curious but silent. The pianist kept playing, unaware that the day's most important performance wasn't musical. Ethan looked around. The hotel was flawless, at least on the surface. Gilded frames, quiet lighting, the illusion of perfection. But the cracks were human, subtle, everywhere. A young bellhop, Tyler, barely 20, struggled to drag a suitcase twice his size across the lobby. "Careful," Richard barked. "You scratch that luggage and you're paying for it." "Yes, sir," the boy said, voice trembling. Ethan's gaze softened. The boy reminded him of his first job, scrubbing factory floors, saving pennies for college that never came. Behind the reception desk stood Martha, a middle-aged clerk with kind eyes and a faded name tag. Her uniform was perfectly pressed, though her hands were rough from years of quiet labor. She noticed Ethan sitting alone and frowned sympathetically. "Would you like some water, sir?" she asked, softly. Before Ethan could reply, Richard cut in. "Martha," he snapped, "we don't serve non-guests." She hesitated. "But he looks—" "I said no." Her lips pressed together. "Yes, Mr. Hale." Ethan smiled faintly at her as she passed, gratitude in his eyes. Richard returned to the counter, muttering to another staffer, "These types wander in from the street, think they belong here. Makes the place look cheap." The staffer laughed nervously, unsure if it was a joke. Ethan folded his hands on his lap, studying the polished floor. The wear reflections distorted the truth. The doors opened. A gust of rain and chatter swept in. A couple entered, arguing over flight delays. A family checked in, exhausted and unseen. Ethan remained still, the eye in the storm. His mind wandered briefly to the last board meeting, where suits measured humanity by quarterly margins. He'd walked out that day, disgusted. Now he was here, among the people those numbers forgot. A waiter passed by with a silver tray of croissants and cappuccinos. The aroma filled the air, soft and rich. Ethan lifted a hand slightly, polite, patient. "Could I order one of those?" he asked. The waiter glanced nervously toward Richard, who gave a single, disapproving shake of his head. "Sorry, sir," the waiter murmured, eyes down. "Guests only." Ethan nodded again. "Of course." The rain outside deepened, drumming softly against the glass walls. The piano shifted into a minor key, haunting, reflective. From the corner of the room, a corporate executive barked at his assistant. Do it right or don't do it at all. God, nobody works in a mall. His voice carried through the lobby like static. No one noticed Ethan glance up at him, recognizing the logo on his briefcase. It belonged to one of his own subsidiary firms. He'd seen that man performance review. A bully in a suit. Numbers up, empathy down. The irony wasn't lost on him. He leaned back, exhaling softly, his thumb brushed against a small brass keychain in his pocket, engraved with the words Redline Heritage, a reminder of who he used to be before wealth built walls around truth. At the counter, Martha whispered to Tyler, I hate how he treats people. You'd think kindness costs a fortune. Tyler nodded. It's just how it is here. But Ethan heard them. Every word. He stood quietly, walked to the window, and watched raindrops merge into one another. Outside, the city pulsed with movement. Taxes, umbrellas, ambition. Inside, stillness ruled. Richard's voice broke the silence again. So, if you're not purchasing anything, I'll have to ask you to step outside. Ethan met his eyes. Calm, measured. You may have to. Richard smirked. Good. I like it when things are simple. Ethan smiled faintly. So do I. The piano fell silent, and for a brief, suspended moment, the whole lobby felt like it was holding its breath. The rain outside softened to a whisper, but inside the regal meridian, tension began to hum louder than the piano. Ethan stayed seated, calm as still water, while the rhythm of cruelty went on around him. Richard Hale, the front manager, paced near the counter like a hawk guarding invisible territory. His reflection glimmered in the marble floor, every movement deliberate, rehearsed. Power was his performance. At the bell desk, Tyler, the young bellhop, tried to stack luggage carts quietly, but Richard's eyes never missed an opportunity. Tyler, he snapped, you call that lined up? It's a 5-star hotel, not a bus depot. Sorry, Mr. Hale. Sorry doesn't polish brass. Kid, do it again. The boy's face tightened. He nodded, whispering an apology no one cared to hear. Guests passed by, their colognes and perfumes masking exhaustion, their smiles transactional. The lobby looked like luxury, but it smelled faintly of fear. From her post behind the desk, Martha glanced at Ethan again. He hadn't moved much, just sat quietly, observing, hands folded, expression unreadable. There was something about his stillness. It made noise in a place addicted to motion. Richard noticed her gaze. Martha, you got time to daydream. You got time to upsell. Room upgrades don't sell themselves. Yes, Mr. Hale, she murmured. He turned back toward Ethan. Sir, you're still here. Ethan's voice was calm, almost gentle. I told you, I'm waiting. For what? Charity. Richard scoffed, loud enough for others to hear. A few guests chuckled politely, thinking that was the expected thing to do. Ethan smiled faintly. Something like that. Richard stepped closer, straightening his tie. Look, pal, I don't know what your game is, but this isn't a shelter. This is a hotel for people who work hard and pay for service. You want a seat, you book a room. Ethan leaned slightly forward. And how do you decide who deserves service? Richard blinked, thrown by the question. I don't decide. Policy does. Policy, Ethan repeated softly, tasting the word like a bitter drink. Right. Martha's fingers froze mid-typing. She knew that tone, quiet, deliberate, dangerous in its calm. Tyler walked by, pushing a luggage cart that squeaked faintly. He risked a glance at Ethan, mouthing, I'm sorry. Ethan nodded back, a small gesture that said, Don't be. Moments later, a guest in a gray suit approached the counter, snapping his fingers. Excuse me, my suite isn't ready, and I've been waiting 10 minutes. This is unacceptable. Richard turned instantly deferential. Of course, sir. My deepest apologies. I'll see to it personally. He gestured toward Martha. Fix it. Now. Yes, Mr. Hale, she said, fingers trembling slightly over the keyboard. Richard turned back to the guest, smile bright as glass. You'll be upgraded to our executive floor, complimentary. Champagne, of course. The man smirked. That's more like it. Ethan watched the performance unfold. How quickly cruelty could shift a charm when a credit card was introduced. When the guests left, Richard turned back toward Ethan. You see, that's how it works. Money talks, attitude walks. Ethan's voice remained calm. Doesn't kindness count for anything here? Richard laughed. Kindness. He leaned on the counter, lowering his voice. You know what kindness gets you in this business. Complaints. Entitlement. Bad reviews. You give people an inch, they take the penthouse. Martha's voice cracked through the tension. I don't believe that. Richard's jaw tensed. Nobody asked what you believe. The piano stopped mid-note. The pianist looked over nervously, fingers hovering above the keys. The silence that followed was thick enough to hear the rain again. Ethan glanced toward Martha. You spoke truth. That counts for something. Richard turned, pointing a finger. Enough. I've had it. You, he pointed at Ethan, need to leave. And you, he glared at Martha, need to remember your place. Martha stepped back, her eyes wet but steady. My place, she said quietly, used to mean something. The words landed like a spark in dry grass. Tyler froze, half hidden behind a column. A housekeeper paused with her cot mid-corridor. Ethan rose slowly. The movement drew every eye in the lobby. He adjusted his cap, then looked directly at Richard. I'll leave when I finish my coffee. Richard scoffed. You don't have coffee. Ethan smiled faintly. Exactly. It was the calmest rebellion anyone had ever seen. Richard turned toward the nearest staffer. Security. Tyler stepped forward hesitantly. There's no security in the lobby right now. They're assisting with an event upstairs. Then go find one, Richard snapped. Now! Tyler didn't move. His throat bobbed. Mr. Hale, maybe we don't need. Did I stutter, kid? Tyler flinched. Martha opened her mouth to protest, but Ethan raised a hand gently. It's fine. He retook a seat. Calm, patient, the embodiment of control. That composure unnerved Richard more than shouting ever could. Who are you? He asked. His tone caught somewhere between anger and unease. Ethan met his gaze. Someone you're teaching a lot about leadership. Richard's face flushed. Get out. Now. Ethan didn't move. He glanced toward the rain-slicked windows. You know, he said softly, I built hotels once. The kind where people mattered more than policies. Richard barked a laugh. Sure you did. Ethan smiled. You'd be surprised how many people say that to me. The elevator dinged. A new arrival, a woman in a tailored black suit, stepped out, followed by two assistants holding tablets. Her ID badge flashed briefly. Redline Holdings, Executive Operations. Martha noticed first. Her eyes widened slightly, confusion stirring. Richard didn't see. He was too busy straightening his tie again, eager to reassert dominance. He leaned toward Ethan. Last warning. Leave before I have you escorted out. Ethan's gaze softened. You're about to get your wish. Richard frowned. What does that mean? Ethan checked his watch. Quietly, deliberately, 12:42 p.m. Then he said it, barely above a whisper, but with a weight of command. Activate B. Richard blinked. What did you just? Before he could finish, the woman in the black suit spoke sharply from across the lobby. Mr. Cole, she said, your team's ready upstairs. The name hung in the air like a sudden gust. Martha froze. Tyler dropped the luggage strap he was holding. The piano player's fingers trembled. Richard's face went pale. See, Cole. Ethan stood, smoothing his rain-spotted polo. Ethan Cole, he said evenly, CEO of Redline Holdings. The room stopped breathing. And, Ethan continued, as of this morning, the new owner of the Regal Meridian Hotel. Richard took a step back, face collapsing into disbelief. You're lying. Ethan tilted his head. Would you like to see the paperwork? The woman in black handed him a folder. Gold seal. Legal signatures. Richard's mouth opened. No words came. Ethan looked around the lobby. His voice was steady, quiet, and devastating. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm not here to embarrass you. I'm here to find out who among you remembers what decency feels like." Martha swallowed hard, tears in her eyes. Tyler exhaled shakily. Ethan turned toward them. "And I think I just found out." The silence after Ethan's reveal stretched through the lobby like a drawn breath no one dared to release. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead, catching the subtle tremor in the air. Even the pianist had stopped playing, his hand hovering above the last trembling note. Richard Hale stood frozen behind the counter, his confident smirk gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like fear. Ethan turned toward Martha. "Would you please ask everyone to take a short break from their stations?" Martha blinked, uncertain. "Sir, should I?" Ethan nodded gently. "Please." His voice wasn't raised, yet it carried across the marble floor like authority wrapped in calm steel. Martha gathered her courage and spoke up. "Everyone, take 5 minutes. Please." The staff hesitated, eyes flicking from her to Richard. Richard tried to regain control. "No one's leaving their post until." Ethan raised a hand. "That was a request from your employer, Mr. Hale. I assume you still respect company policy." Richard's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Slowly, the staff dispersed. Bellhops, receptionists, cleaners. The lobby emptied until only a few remained. Martha, Tyler, Richard, and the woman in the black suit, who stood quietly near the elevator, tablet in hand. Ethan walked toward the large window overlooking the city. Rain streaked the glass like threads of silver. He placed a hand against it, his reflection merging with the storm. "When I started Redline Holdings," he began softly, "I built it on one rule: never treat people as decoration." Richard shifted uneasily. "Look, Mr. Cole, Ethan, whatever this is, it's obviously a misunderstanding. You came in here dressed like, well, like someone beneath you." Ethan turned slightly, eyes calm but piercing. Richard faltered. "I didn't mean." Ethan's tone remained even. "You did, and that's why I came." He stepped closer, the quiet power in his presence magnified by the stillness of the room. "You see, Mr. Hale, luxury isn't marble floors or gold logos. It's dignity, the kind you offer to everyone, not just the ones holding platinum cards." Richard swallowed. "So, I didn't know who you were." "That's exactly the point." The words landed heavy. No anger, just disappointment sharpened into truth. Ethan turned toward Tyler. "Son, what's your name?" "Tyler Brooks." "So, how long have you been working here?" "Almost 2 years." Ethan nodded. "And in those 2 years, how often were you spoken to with respect?" Tyler hesitated, glancing nervously at Richard. "Honestly, sir, not often." "Why?" Tyler looked down. "Because I'm replaceable." Ethan's expression softened. "No, you're not. People who serve with humility are the foundation of this business. The ones who forget that are the ones I replace." Richard's lips parted, protest dying before it began. Ethan turned to Martha. "You stood up when it mattered. Why?" She blinked, unsure whether she was being reprimanded or praised. "Because it was wrong. Sir? The way he spoke to you, the way he speaks to everyone. It's not how I was raised to treat people." Ethan smiled faintly. "Good answer." He looked toward his operations executive, the woman in black. "Rebecca, make a note. I want Martha transferred to senior front desk supervisor, effective immediately." Martha gasped softly. "So, thank you, but I don't know if I." "You already proved you can lead," Ethan said simply. "Titles only confirm what actions already show." Rebecca typed swiftly on her tablet. "Done." Ethan turned back toward Richard. "Now, let's talk about you." Richard straightened his jacket. "Sir, I can explain." "I'm sure you can," Ethan interrupted gently. "But I'm more interested in hearing from the people you've led." He nodded toward Tyler. "Tell me, honestly, how would you describe Mr. Hale's leadership?" Tyler froze. His eyes darted between them. "Sir, I don't want to." "Speak freely," Ethan said. There are no consequences. Tyler hesitated, then spoke softly. He manages with fear. People don't respect him. They survive him. We try our best because we need the job, not because we feel valued. Martha looked down, nodding quietly. Ethan's eyes didn't leave Richard. That's a hard thing to hear, but an important one. Richard's voice cracked with restrained panic. Mr. Cole, I've dedicated 10 years to this hotel. I've brought in revenue, awards, high-end clientele. And you lost the soul that built it, Ethan said sharply. You turned hospitality into hierarchy. You made people feel small in a place that was meant to make them feel seen. The words echoed like a verdict. Richard's face tightened. Sir, please, I was just enforcing standards. No, Ethan cut in, his voice low but powerful. You were enforcing your ego. He stepped closer, their height nearly even, but the distance and authority immeasurable. You see, Richard, he said softly, I used to be you once, before I learned the difference between control and leadership. Control demands obedience. Leadership earns loyalty. Richard's eyes dropped to the floor. Ethan sighed. Rebecca, please contact HR. Mr. Hale will be placed on administrative leave pending review. Richard looked up, disbelief flooding his face. You're firing me. I'm giving you a chance, Ethan said, to remember what respect feels like before you ever manage people again. Richard's shoulders sagged. For the first time, the man who once ruled the lobby looked small. Ethan turned away, gaze returning to the rain outside. The storm had quieted, or maybe it just seemed quieter now. Martha stepped closer, her voice gentle. Sir, why do this yourself? You could have sent an audit team, a memo, an inspection. Ethan smiled faintly. Because people don't show their truth to suits. They show it when they think you're invisible. Tyler whispered, That's kind of brilliant, sir. Ethan chuckled. It's humbling, too. You learn who still believes kindness is weakness. Rebecca approached. Sir, would you like to address the staff collectively? HR can assemble everyone in the ballroom. Ethan nodded. Yes, it's time they know what kind of company they truly work for. He started toward the elevator, then paused, turning back to Martha and Tyler. Bring them, he said. They've earned front row seats. Martha's eyes widened. Tyler nearly dropped his cap. Us, sir. Ethan smiled. Yes, I like reminding good people what winning feels like. As they followed him toward the elevator, Richard stood rooted behind the counter, a ghost among chandeliers. The lobby doors opened again, and a gust of cool air swept in, stirring the gold curtains. Guests entering had no idea they were walking into a story that will be whispered through every hallway of the Regal Meridian for years to come. When the elevator doors closed, Ethan caught his reflection in the mirrored walls, the worn navy cap still on his head, rain stains drying on his polo. He smiled quietly to himself. Sometimes, he murmured, you have to walk in as a man they ignore to remind them what real power looks like. The elevator chimed softly as it ascended toward the executive ballroom, and somewhere deep inside the hotel, a system built on arrogance began to tremble. The ballroom lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, reflections rippling across the glass chandeliers like liquid gold. Rows of employees filled the seats, bellhops, receptionists, housekeepers, chefs. The hum of whispered curiosity buzzed through the air like static. No one knew exactly why they'd been called in on short notice, only that something or someone had shifted the balance of power inside the Regal Meridian. At the front of the room stood Ethan Cole, still in his worn navy cap and polo, still calm, still quiet. Rebecca stood beside him, tablet in hand. Behind them, Martha and Tyler exchanged uneasy glances, both unsure if they even belonged here. A projector screen lowered slowly, the hotel's logo glimmering at the top. Ethan spoke first. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I know this is unusual, but then again, he paused, eyes scanning the crowd, so is forgetting what hospitality means. The room stirred, nervous laughter, faint murmurs. Ethan took off his cap, setting it gently on the podium. When I walked into this hotel 2 days ago, I wasn't wearing a suit. I didn't have a reservation. I didn't use my name. I wanted to see how this place treated people who didn't look like they mattered. A ripple of silence. Every employee leaned forward slightly. Ethan's voice softened, but carried. I was told to wait outside in the rain. Called, sir, with that tone that means anything but respect. And yet, one of you chose kindness anyway. He turned toward Martha. Martha, you didn't know who I was. You just saw someone being humiliated, and you spoke up. That's leadership. Gasps rippled through the room. Martha looked down, her cheeks warm. I wasn't trying to lead, sir. I just couldn't stand by. That, Ethan said, is exactly what leaders do. He turned back to the crowd. What you don't know is that I own this hotel. Of the Regal Meridian. Murmurs spread like fire, disbelief, realization, fear. Richard Hale, still standing by the side door in his tailored vest, went pale. Ethan didn't look at him yet. I built this company 20 years ago, Ethan went on. Not for profit alone, but to prove that luxury and humanity can coexist. That true prestige comes from how we make people feel, not what we make them pay. He let the words hang in the air. But somewhere along the way, he continued, we lost it. And that loss doesn't begin at the front desk. It begins at the top. Every eye turned toward Richard. Ethan finally faced him. Mr. Hale, do you want to tell them what you said to me? Richard's voice was barely audible. Sir, Ethan cut him off gently. You said, and I quote, people like you don't belong in the lobby. Gasps again. Someone whispered, he said that? Ethan looked out at the staff, dozens of faces reflecting guilt, shock, and quiet vindication. I didn't correct him, Ethan said, because I wanted to see what others would do. I wanted to know who would defend a stranger when it could cost them their job. He gestured to Martha and Tyler. These two did, quietly, bravely, and without expectation. Rebecca stepped forward, tapping her tablet. Effective immediately, Martha Hayes is promoted to senior front office manager and Tyler Brooks to guest relations supervisor. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then swelling with genuine warmth. Martha's eyes brimmed. Tyler blinked in disbelief. Richard took a step forward. Sir, please, if I'd known who you were. That's the problem, Ethan interrupted. You treat people based on what they can do for you, not who they are. He looked back at the audience, and I suspect is not the only one. A housekeeper in the third row raised a hand timidly. So, sometimes we try to speak up, but management tells us to stay in our lane. Ethan nodded slowly. That end today. He motioned to Rebecca, who pressed a button on her tablet. The projector screen flickered to a spreadsheet, internal staff surveys, anonymous complaints, ignored memos. These were buried, Ethan said quietly. Unanswered. Dismissed. That's over. Every voice in this room will be heard. Every complaint reviewed. A murmur was swept through the staff. Richard spoke again, desperation leaking through his polished tone. Mr. Cole, please. You don't understand the stress we're under. The deadlines, the pressure. Ethan's tone hardened. Pressure reveals character, Richard. And yours showed exactly what you believe leadership means. Fear, not respect. He stepped closer. But I'll tell you something. You're not being fired. Not yet. Richard blinked. So, you're being reassigned. To housekeeping. Gasps. A few employees covered their mouths. You'll work 1 week beside the people you ignored, Ethan said. Clean their rooms. Carry their cots. Listen to their stories. And if you still believe you're above them, then you'll leave this company for good. Richard's face turned crimson, but he said nothing. Ethan turned back to the staff. Each of you deserves better. Not just from management, from this company. Starting today, new training, higher wages, and a zero-tolerance policy for humiliation or discrimination. Ever. Applause thundered. The ballroom came alive with clapping hands, grateful tears, stunned smiles. Ethan raised his hand, quieting them again. I didn't come here to shame anyone, he said softly. I came to remind us all what we stand for. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn coin, dull silver, edges smoothed by years of touch. "My father gave me this," Ethan said. "He was a janitor in a hotel just like this." He said, "One day, son, if you ever run a place like this, make sure everyone who cleans it feels like they own it." He held the coin up. "This is my reminder." The room was silent. Some people had tears in their eyes. Ethan placed a coin on the podium and looked across the crowd. Hundreds of faces, each one now lifted with hope or shame or awe. "You'll rebuild this hotel," he said quietly. "Together, with dignity." Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "And if anyone here still believes kindness is weakness, you're in the wrong business." He stepped back. The applause this time was deafening. Rebecca leaned toward him. "Sir, I think they understand." Ethan smiled faintly. "Good. Then the real work begins." As he walked out of the ballroom, Martha and Tyler followed beside him, not as subordinates anymore, but as allies. Behind them, the staff rose to their feet. The sound was thunder in the golden room. Outside, rain light shimmered through the tall windows, washing the city in reflection. And for the first time in years, the Regal Meridian didn't feel cold. It felt alive. The next morning, the Regal Meridian didn't open with its usual shine. It woke up in a quiet storm. At 6 a.m., black sedans rolled to the front entrance. Men and women in dark suits stepped out, auditors, inspectors, compliance officers, each carrying slim briefcases stamped with a Red Line Holdings crest. Guests watched through the glass doors, curious. Staff whispered behind polished counters, hearts pounding with both fear and hope. For years, the hotel had been run like a kingdom with invisible walls. Only now, those walls were being inspected, brick by brick, policy by policy. Richard Hale stood at the edge of the lobby, his once slick hair slightly unkempt, his vest replaced by a plain uniform shirt. A name tag pinned to his chest read, "Richard, Housekeeping." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. He pushed a linen cart down the corridor under the guidance of Rosa, a housekeeper who'd worked at the hotel for 15 years. She moved with calm grace, folding towels with mechanical precision. "Corner folds, tight corners," she instructed without looking at him. "Yes," Richard muttered. "Don't call me. Just do the work." He nodded, scrubbing at the edge of a mirror, his reflection staring back. Not the manager, not the boss, just a man who'd been stripped down to humility. Halfway through the second room, his knees ached. He glanced at Rosa. "How do you do this every day?" She smiled faintly. "We don't think about the pain. We think about going home with clean hands." Her words landed heavier than any reprimand. Downstairs, Ethan watched from the mezzanine balcony as the inspection teams worked. He wasn't smiling, just observing. Quietly, intently, beside him stood Rebecca, tablet glowing with updates. Health inspection team found outdated certifications in the kitchen. HR audit uncovered 4 unresolved harassment complaints, she reported softly. Ethan nodded. And accounting. Payroll discrepancies, unpaid overtime for night shift staff. We're addressing it immediately. Good, Ethan said. Pay every cent. With interest. Rebecca typed quickly. He exhaled, leaning against the railing. Below him, the lobby bustled with cautious energy, nervous but alive. "This place isn't broken," Ethan murmured. "It just forgot its heart." Rebecca looked at him curiously. Why not just fire everyone responsible and start fresh? Ethan shook his head. Because systems fail when people forget they are part of one. If I erase them, they'll never learn. If I reform them, they'll never forget. At noon, Ethan gathered the department heads in the executive lounge, a glass-walled room overlooking the skyline. The atmosphere was tense. Some sat rigid, others avoided his gaze entirely. He began quietly. "I didn't call this meeting for punishment. I called it for perspective." He picked up a single cup of coffee from the table. Simple, black. "Do you know who makes this coffee every morning?" he asked. Silence. No one answered. "It's brewed by Rosa," Ethan said. "She's been here 15 years. Never missed a shift. Yet not one of you knew her name." A few heads lowered. "That's what I mean when I say this place forgot its heart," Ethan continued. "Luxury is how we treat the unseen." He turned to the food and beverage director. Mark, I read your employee reviews. High profits, low morale. You've been running your kitchen like a factory, not a family. Mark swallowed. So, I just wanted efficiency. Efficiency without empathy, Ethan interrupted. That's exploitation. He turned to another manager. And you, Linda, your department denied vacation requests for 2 years straight. When I asked why, you said, it's policy. Whose policy? Not mine. She looked away, ashamed. Ethan's voice softened. We're changing all of it. Every department. Every protocol. From now on, every employee review will include a measure of kindness. Every bonus is tied to mentorship. Every success judged not just by revenue, but by respect. He set down the cup, letting the silence stretch. Because I'll tell you this, a company's true brand isn't in its ads. It's in the stories employees tell when no one's listening. He stood then, gaze sweeping across the room. You'll rebuild this place. With Martha leading guest relations training, and Tyler running the empathy workshops I'm instituting across all branches. Martha, sitting quietly at the end of the table, blinked in shock. Sir, me. Yes, Ethan said. You've earned it. You understand what service means when no one's watching. The others nodded slowly, some out of respect, others out of realization. By evening, the hotel had changed its rhythm. Guests noticed a difference first. Smiles were real. Good evening no longer sounded rehearsed. The pianist returned to his corner, this time playing softer, warmer notes. Tyler stood at the reception desk, helping a new employee with check-ins. Eye contact first, he whispered. Let them feel seen. Across the lobby, Martha was showing a group of bellhops how to handle complaints with empathy, not fear. Apologies don't cost anything, she said, but they can buy back someone's trust. Her voice carried gently, and Ethan, passing by, paused to listen, a faint, proud smile crossing his face. Later that night, he found Richard still scrubbing a bathroom floor. Richard looked up, breathless. So, Ethan crouched beside him, resting a hand on the counter. You've done 5 floors. Yes, so. Good. How does it feel? Richard hesitated. Different. Humbling. Ethan nodded. Good. That's where real change starts. He handed Richard a towel. You have 1 more day. After that, you'll decide whether you want to stay here or walk away. Richard's eyes flicked up, glassy. Why give me a second chance? Ethan stood, because people gave me mine, and I refuse to lead a company that only believes in punishment. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. Clean hands, Richard. That's all that matters. The following week, news outlet began catching wind of what had happened. Headline: Undercover CEO exposes toxic culture at luxury hotel. Employees say everything's changing. Social media is flooded with clips from the staff meeting, leaked photos, and whispers of reform. Guests posted reviews praising the sudden warmth of the place. A journalist asked Ethan during an interview, "Why didn't you fire them all?" He smiled faintly. Because compassion without accountability is weakness, but accountability without compassion is cruelty. The clip went viral. By the end of the month, the Regal Meridian had transformed from a cautionary tale into a case study. Employee retention tripled. Guest satisfaction soared. And, for the first time in years, the staff started referring to the hotel not as the Meridian, but our Meridian. Rosa became head of housekeeping. Mark started mentorship programs for young chefs. Linda began approving family leave requests personally. And Richard, after finishing his week in housekeeping, asked for a meeting with Ethan. When he entered the office, he didn't stand tall. He carried a mop handle instead of a resume. "Sir," he said quietly, "I'd like to stay, but this time I want to learn before I lead." Ethan looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Then start tomorrow as an assistant under Martha. Richard blinked, then nodded gratefully. "Thank you." Ethan smiled. "Don't thank me. Thank the person you used to ignore." That night, Ethan stood by the hotel front doors, the same ones that had once been slammed in his face. Outside, the rain had stopped. The marble gleamed beneath the city lights. Guests came and went. Employees laughed softly as they passed him. Unaware the man watching them was a reason the place finally felt human again. Rebecca joined him at the entrance. "It worked," she said softly. "They are different." Ethan nodded. They remembered. "Remembered what?" she asked. He looked out into the night. That respect is the only luxury that never goes out of style. The wind shifted. The city hummed. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan Cole, the billionaire who'd once been told to wait outside, felt peace. 6 months later, the Regal Meridian didn't just recover, it redefined itself. The marble floors gleamed not because of polish, but because people walked them with pride. The front desk no longer echoed with scripted greetings, but with genuine warmth. And for the first time in its long, gilded history, the staff cafeteria was louder than the ballroom upstairs. Laughter, stories, shared meals. Martha stood by the lobby entrance one evening, watching the soft gold light spill across the floor. Her uniform had changed, now a tailored navy jacket with a small silver badge. Guest experience director. Tyler approached with 2 cups of coffee. "Still working." She smiled. "I don't know if this feels like work anymore." He handed her 1 cup. "That's how you know its purpose." She laughed gently, sipping. "You're starting to sound like him." Tyler grinned. Ethan's been rubbing off on everyone. Ethan Cole had returned to Redline Holdings headquarters, but his visits to the Meridian were frequent and unannounced, just like before. Except this time, when he walked through the doors, people didn't look away. They smiled. They greeted him. They knew who he was, and they didn't treat him like a ghost. He liked that. This afternoon, he walked quietly through the staff lounge. Rosa waved from across the room, stacking fresh linens with her new team. Richard, now in a crisp shirt and modest tie, was showing a group of trainees how to handle guest complaints with grace. Ethan paused, listening as Richard said, "We don't serve rooms, we serve moments." It was almost word for word what Ethan had once told his executive board years ago. And now, it meant something again. Later, Ethan stood on the rooftop terrace with Rebecca, overlooking the city. The skyline shimmered like a constellation made of glass and steel. "You ever think you'd see this place reborn?" she asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "Not like this. I used to think growth meant expansion. More hotels, more towers, more profit." He exhaled slowly. "Now I realize it means elevation, of people, not buildings." Rebecca nodded. "So what happens next?" He looked out across the city. "We take this model, the Meridian method, they are calling it now, and apply it across the chain. Training, reform, transparency." Every employee was invited. From kitchen to concierge, from janitor to general manager. No tuxedos, no rigid formality, just community. Martha stood by the microphone, nerves dancing in her stomach. Tyler nudged her gently. "You'll do fine." She smiled, taking the stage as the room quieted. "I remember a time," she began, "when I thought hard work wasn't enough, when kindness felt invisible, when no one cared to listen." She paused, eyes glistening. "But someone did. Someone walked through those doors pretending to be no one, and showed us that every person here is a reason this hotel exists." A hush fell over the room. "So tonight isn't about promotion or profit," she said softly. "It's about people, about remembering that the greatest luxury in hospitality is humanity." Applause erupted, long, loud, genuine. Ethan, standing at the back of the room, simply watched. No spotlight, no announcement, just quiet pride. He looked around, faces glowing with joy, laughter spilling like light through the air. This was the real wealth he'd always been searching for. Rebecca leaned over and whispered, "You could have told him it was you." Ethan smiled. "They already know. And that's enough." Later that night, when the ballroom lights dimmed and the music softened, Ethan stepped outside onto the terrace alone. The city below pulsed with life. He pulled the worn navy cap from his coat pocket, the same one he'd worn that night when they told him to wait outside. He turned it in his hands, the fabric still faintly smelling of rain. Then, quietly, he placed it on the marble ledge and left it there, a symbol not of disguise, but of remembrance. Because sometimes, To rebuild an empire, you have to start as a stranger at your own door. He looked out at the skyline, then whispered to no one in particular, "Respect. That's the only real currency we have." And with that, Ethan Cole, the billionaire who once stood outside his own hotel, finally walked away, not as a man with money, but as a man with meaning. The lobby was quiet again. Midnight light spilled through the tall glass windows, painting the marble floor in soft silver. Ethan Cole stood alone, his reflection hovering faintly beside his own, two versions of the same man. The one who had walked in wearing a cap, invisible, and the one who now stood here, seen. His voice came low, measured, the kind of tone that carried truth without needing to shout. People think power changes you, but it doesn't. It reveals you. The uniform, the title, the paycheck, they are just masks we wear to be accepted in rooms that forgot what respect feels like. He walked slowly through the empty corridor. The chandelier above glimmered like a crown, not his, but theirs, the workers who made this place breathe. "I used to believe leadership was about building empires," he continued softly. "Now I know. It's about building people. Because when you stop seeing the person cleaning the floor, you've already doubted your soul." He paused by the staff bulletin board, where, weeks ago, anonymous complaints and resignation letters once covered the wall. Now, there were thank you notes, smiling Polaroids, a quote printed in bold, "Everyone who enters here matters." Ethan traced the word with his fingertips, then turned toward the main doors, the same doors that once closed in his face. "They told me to wait outside," he murmured. "And maybe that's exactly what I needed, to remember what it feels like to be left out, so no one else ever would." He stopped, looking back one last time. Martha's laughter echoed faintly from the staff lounge below. Tyler's voice followed, teasing her about the coffee again. He smiled, the kind of smile that only comes when the story finally makes sense. As he stepped into the night, the city lights flickered like silent applause. "Kindness," he said quietly, "doesn't make headlines, but it makes legacies." The camera lingered on his silhouette, fading into the glow of the streetlights. And his final words, soft, deliberate, unforgettable, carried through the darkness. "When you see wrong, do you stay quiet, or do you stand up